Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a NASCAR race, the Cup race here at Las Vegas. This should be a little bit more of a normal race than what we've had lately, so this is definitely going to be a nicer race, and I think that from that perspective, it'll be a little bit less chaotic. However, the truck race, and the Xfinity race definitely had some interesting things going on, and so we definitely have some uh, interesting options for this track. I will note that over the last several races here, we really have just three teams that have done well, which is where we get wins, I should say, which are Joe Gibbs, Penske, and Hendrick. And I do expect one of those three teams to win today. So let's go and get into this. So we have quite a few interesting plays on this slate, but we're gonna you want to look at drivers that are starting near the front. That's gonna be very helpful in getting yourself a win or a top five on this track because it is somewhat difficult to pass. But we do have some drivers too that are starting near the back that have some potential today. As we know, starting position and your uh, finished position differential is also in play in fantasy, so that has a lot to do with this track. Looking at first, we'll look at Kyle Larson. Now he's starting second. A lot of winners here come from the front row, and Larson has 2 wins in the past 6 races here, including 5 top 10s. He's one of the only drivers that has more than more top tens than anybody else at this racetrack in the last 6. He's odds-on favorite to win for a reason. The winner will come from a Hendrick, Penske, or Joe Gibbs, like I said. And he's probably my favorite for this track in general. Of course, he's also the most expensive. Looking at Danny Hamlin, he's starting 28th, which gives him a lot of utility here. His qualifying effort has been a lot to be desired, but he's good fantasy potential for getting up into the top five. He's also been a top five practice car today, so I think he does draw a lot of potential despite the low starting position. Looking at William Byron, I do really like Hendrick a lot in this race. He's been a top 10 car in practice, and he's had 4 top 10s in the past 6 here. He's got good. He's got the second highest rating of any driver for this race, and so that gives him a lot of potential here. He's starting fourth too, so he's got a couple of positions to move up, but not a ton. But he's also one of 4 drivers that have led over 100 laps over the last 4 races, so he's definitely in play on this track. Looking at Ryan Blaney, Blaney has also been very good here. I also like Penske a lot for this track. I do think he's the better option of him and Logano simply because Logano is starting first, and that gives him a little bit more limited opportunity. But Blaney has some good upside here, and he's definitely worth a look. As for Logano, he does have the opportunity because he's going to be on the pole, but he hasn't led a ton of laps at this track, only 48 over the last 6 races, even though he does have a win. He's definitely in play though. Looking at Kyle Busch for RCR now, RCR has struggled here, but Kyle Busch is Kyle Busch, and he's had 6 top 20s in the past 6 races. He's one of the only drivers to do that, and if we look at that as well, he's had 5 top 5s in those last 6, and he's starting 21st. That gives him a lot of upside and potential to move up. Though he definitely carries some risk, and it's like going to be harder to pass at this track than some of the other tracks that we've already been at so far this season. Looking at Martin Truex Jr., he's starting 7th, and he's got a really good opportunity to have a pretty good race here. Joe Gibbs should compete for a win here, and he's been a solid race car driver at this track. In fact, he's one of the better uh, top 10, as he's had 6 top 10s in the past 10 races here. So, or sorry, in the last 6 races here. So he's one of the top options for this track. In general, he's one of my favorite drivers for this track as well. Looking at Ross Chastain, he's also been very good, and Trackhouse has been solid recently. I do like his car here. He's also one of the few drivers over 100 laps led on this race, and he's really, considering starting 20th, um, he also did pretty well in practice as he was tops there. So he looks like a really solid opportunity for him in this track on this track. I also like Brad Keselowski today. Brad has been pretty solid at this track with 3 top 10s in the last 6 races here. He's also got a pretty good rating considering the fact he's $8,500. And RFK's done pretty good here. I do think Brad is the only option though for this team. He's a little bit safer than the 23XI cars, which are similarly priced with Reddick and Wallace. I think he's got a little bit more upside than they do. But and his starting position also gives him some upside. Looking at Alex Bowman, he is starting farther back, but Hendrick's cars are really good here, and he's actually been really solid here in the past. In fact, he's had a win and a couple top fives, but the DNFs have hurt him. Uh, that said, he's got a pretty good driver rating, and most of that bad luck hopefully can wave off. He was also solid in practices. He was 12th. He has potential to be a top 10 and compete for this one. Excuse me. Looking at Ty Gibbs now, he's obviously somebody that's going to bring a lot of risk as he's in a good car for a change here. He's been fast in practice. No surprise that Joe Gibbs' cars are good here. Hard to feel super confident, but he has a high risk, high reward status here as he's starting up pretty high. But he can if he can maintain, then he'll be all right. But he has only three races here in the Cup Series, and he hasn't really done much in those. Average finish of 26, so he definitely carries a lot of risk. I do have three value plays I do like, or I should say Hail Mary type plays I do like, and I'll talk about those guys now here. First will be Carson Hocevar for Spire. Now his car is decently fast. He carries some risk. I don't see a top 5 here, but I think he's interesting. If he can survive the race, then I think he's got some potential here, as he's one of the better cheap options, sub $6,000 price tag. Gives him some utility. And then I'm going to look at the two colleague cars. Daniel Hemrick first. Starting 34th gives him a lot of maneuverability. His only race here before he started 16th and finished 22nd, but starting 34th, moving up to 22nd is definitely interesting. And the colleague cars have been good here in the past, and I think they draw some potential here. Uh, that will also say Derek Cross. He's also in the other colleague car, and he's definitely interesting as he's starting 33rd. Obviously, he hasn't raced here in this cup before, but he definitely draws some interesting potential. So with that said, I do think this race is going to be pretty interesting. I do think that you probably want to draw some guys from the front of the race track, which is definitely going to be Larson, William Byron, Logano, and Truex. And then you might want to mix in some guys that are in the mid pack or late in the back of the pack that have some potential moving over up, like Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch uh, and Ross Chastain. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. And have a nice day, guys.